Hey there, my name is Stephen Ross, and I am so proud to be the audio and video producer for many projects for Sing the North, including this one, Narvaez Bay. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this and just talk ever so briefly about my background, my process of creating these virtual choir projects, and especially the unique sort of challenges that made Narvaez Bay such a special one. So I live here in Louisville, Colorado, but I'm actually originally from Winnipeg, Manitoba, so it's extra special for me to maintain these Canadian connections and sort of represent my people through virtual choirs. I come at these kind of projects with a formal background not in audio or video production, but in working with choirs and performing. My full-time job right now, I'm actually a performer in an a cappella group called Face Vocal Band, and we perform all over Colorado. We travel around the US, and sometimes we get to travel around the world. And that's my main gig, but on top of that, I also direct a large community choir based here in Louisville, Colorado. It's about 150 adults. It's the Coal Creek Community Chorus. And those are my main gigs. But of course, when the pandemic hit, I had to pump the brakes on all of that and figure out what I was going to do to put food on the table for my wife and 3 kids. And so I started dabbling on the computer, first with just my community choir to try to salvage some of what we were working on, to create, I'd seen these online, these virtual choir videos. Would I be able to figure it out? So I took a swing at it and had singers submit videos of them performing. My first song I ever produced was Away from the Roll of the Sea. I put that out on my own little social media, and then other choirs and choir directors from around Colorado, and then eventually the US, and a couple from around the world sort of saw what I was working on and decided to reach out to me to sort of do the same thing for their groups, to salvage what they had been working on that spring of 2020, and then also to keep things going into 21 and 22. So over the course of the pandemic, I think I put together 80 or so virtual choirs of different sizes, maybe 16 singers to 150 singers, and I try to make them dynamic and interesting to watch and listen to, but still make the choirs sound like themselves as authentically as possible. So then right near the end of the pandemic, Catherine reached out to me about maybe working with Sing the North. At first it was just about buttoning up a few things that she had sort of going midstream already, and we did that work, and then there was some new music coming, and so we've done now a handful of those, and then she presented to me this new piece they wanted to do, very unique song, Narvaez Bay. So first thing I do, I open up the PDF of the sheet music, and immediately I see this sort of graphical representation of the moon and the tides, and the choirs just singing this ethereal thing. I noticed the video's very long, and I'm like, well, I've never seen anything quite like this before. And so that gets into sort of the process of how I put this particular song together. So much of it is about communicating with the director and figuring out what their vision of the song is. And so I worked with Catherine on things like the tempo and the feel and sort of the vibe, if you will, of the whole project. And she gave me a really good sense of what she had in mind. From there, the next step to make sure the singers are all singing together is to create these sing-along videos. Typically what I do is I'd record myself singing all the voice parts and then put it on a video that sort of had the sheet music going, so that when the singers are recording themselves, they can be watching the sheet music and hearing what it sounds like over headphones and then singing along with it. And then everyone's in time with the project. But of course, this song is 17, 18 minutes long. And so what Catherine and I figured out was you could break it up in these chunks, and every section sort of had a different approach to how it would be broken up. For the basses and baritones, it was a lot of these long drones. And so their videos would be just hold this note on this vowel as long as you can, or this syllable. Sopranos were singing these repetitive but beautiful sort of multi-octave scales up and down slowly on different vowels. The biggest challenge was with the altos, because the altos had basically 17, 18 minutes of new music all the way across. So I broke it up into 90-second-ish chunks. So singers could then record just that little chunk and then take a break and then study the next chunk and then record that, whatever their pace was. Some singers submitted the whole song. Some singers just did certain little chunks. And then it was important on the back end then to label all of those chunks, first of all, just so I know what it was. And then the next step is to drop it in my audio software. There's a lot of great different softwares out there. I happen to use Logic Pro. I take everyone's little individual MP3s, I drop it in the project. And in the project itself, before I even drop any audio, I have it all laid out. It's sort of using software instruments or MIDI. You can hear the whole song played with, just sort of synthesizer sounding flutes. But that way I sort of have the grid of where each section is supposed to happen. And then because we're so organized, basically I drop the audio into Logic and then I can slide it around and put it where I need to. In this case, I color coded all of the files so I could see, which section of the song went where, and then all the singers got their own little line. And this is what it looks like sort of all together visually. This is just sort of how I organized it, and you can see the alto parts all color coded, and then the tenors and basses and sopranos. And then it's just a lot of it's 1,000 little minute edits, making sure, especially the altos who are singing 18 minutes of these unique quarter note pitches on different syllables, making sure they're all in tune and in time with themselves. I'm cross-fading different vowels from one to another. When it's I to I can sort of fade those into each other for each singer so that it's such a gradual process. You don't hear it happening, but a second later you're like, oh, we were just on this vowel, now we're on this vowel. And it was a really neat process to take such a unique song. I mean, this is really like science and nature and life being perfectly represented in music in this very ethereal and peaceful and slow way. It's a commitment to listen to this thing. You can sit back and you should. I picture maybe in a bath or something, or with a glass of wine, or watching a sunset and just hitting play and sitting back and letting it wash over you, as though you were sort of sitting at Narvaez Bay watching it all happen, as time is sort of going by, days are cycling through. This was daunting at first. I'll admit it was daunting. But then once you sort of broke it down and figured out a plan of attack, got Catherine and the singers to understand how we were doing it, and they totally bought in, and then submitted some really high quality performances. I'm really pleased with how it turned out, and I certainly hope you enjoy it as well. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this, and in doing so, supporting a little Canadian musician here in Colorado, trying to make ends meet to support my family. I'm so proud to be a full-time musician with my hands in so many different projects, and Sing the North plays a large part of that, and this project in particular. So thank you very much. I really hope you enjoy it. It's been a pleasure being a part of it, and I look forward to doing many more projects with you in the future.